Hello, sweet amnesia. Welcome back to whatever it is on the Political Minute. It's been a minute, and I think we've forgotten about some things. We've gotten caught up in the moments of what is, and not staying with the real issues that are there. I apologize for this if I've been too much on political current events. In order to try and do my best way of saying everything here, I will try and take back to whatever it is that we can discuss. So let's hit a First Amendment situation over that which is the Japanese Catholic Church. I've hit over the parts of the English church, and everybody thinks just because they see a Protestant church it has to be English, and it's hiding out. This is very far from the truth. These are groups that have lost their male or female lead, as far as like having a woman to carry on the lineage name, everything else, and or still hold out against any enemy that could be there without naming them, so they don't look like they're trying to retake the USA in certain ways. These churches are basically Catholic for all intents and purposes from their original foundational Catholic government, and are, in a way, just going to baptize instead of christen, because it is the armor of their God. This is something that has a lot of situations in it to where you could say, okay, every single person at that church cannot make it in the military. It's like suicide for them. Okay. In and of itself, the Japanese Catholic Church, being underneath the emperor, can, if it was allowed to be in the USA, in all of its situations and everything else, totally open, could have some of its members commit ritualistic, imperialistic suicide if it was completely opened up to themselves and had all restrictions taken off of it. There are several Catholic churches that do not have restrictions on them necessarily. There are some that I do know do have vast amounts of restrictions on them. Opus Dei was one of these groups that was part of the Catholic Church under its umbrella and everything else that was for a long time forbidden to be in the United States of America. And then, however it was, there was something that was deemed that it would not do anything to non-Catholic family units, and they would respectfully live alongside of them and do nothing of that. And there was a bylaw or something else or some agreement made, and then they were allowed to be open. I think if I said it was 96, it's 98. Of course, as soon as I say that, I think it's the year after the Tom Hanks movie. There's two or three major situations in the Bible Belt area. That's really like the top of politics. Everything basically revolves around the First Amendment, and people say it's the second. In looking at the Japanese Catholic situation, would they be trying to, as it is, always bring honor back in some way to the emperor because of the loss of World War II? Now, in saying this, one could say and deduce if certain things were made available to the public, which they were until we went to war, that Al Qaeda was basically in the third tier on the construct of the secondary tribal. I know most people aren't that familiar with Catholicism and everything else, and this was when they were the secondary tribal of Mussolini. So we're in essence still fighting the World War II. And you can say it's an endless war and everything else. Same could be said over the Ba'athist Party. The Ba'athist Party was made by Mussolini himself in one of his inner circle political groups. This was something that was very easy to look up. When Knoxville hit the fan and everything else, it's like this. It was so bad, there's not a way you could even say there was a race riot. They couldn't organize for a race riot. And for 3 years to 4 years, for anything saying that one side of the place was being treated more unfairly than anything. And back then, everybody was pretty much equal in numbers. So even them trying to organize on the Hispanic side for something, the Oriental side for something, it was just physically impossible because someone would shoot somebody, even on the white side, or wherever you want to say, the native side, or else even the varying degrees of in the middle. And a lot of these books were burned. I've had it back from some people because I have seen people on television walk by, know what they're saying. Other people just kind of give you the walk by, media, so to speak of. And they found some of the books. And then they started saying on Fox News that they were being burned. But again, I digress off of something. And while we are kind of still fighting a part of World War II with Al-Qaeda right now in Afghanistan, and it's basically them getting money from selling heroin to different places and certain things like that because it's a police issue. It is kind of disturbing in a way that suicide, depending on how you coupled it, when supposedly there's been a deal made that Al-Qaeda under the American Crusader being called up, which is someone who is sworn underneath the Pope, and is technically a foreign national soldier because their allegiance lies to a foreign national government, Vatican City, that they're not part, and that was back about 2015, give or take, very much into the war, very far along in progression, that you could say that they're Christian suicide bombers. They could have said that it's a calling of Jesus that could be attached at one time to the Japanese Catholic faith. I know that that's going to be very controversial, but here's one thing that I can say underneath some of the situations out there. There's a story that I'm going to do in my writing from numerous witnesses, and it's like I can take you to where they were at, I can take you to where this was at, that was at, where they told me this, where they found, things that came down, the governments came and got, whatever it is. It's not Roswell. It's not that. But that's a totally different story and needs a different platform and a lengthy 2 or 3 hour long story. They can do with it what it wants to and send it in Library of Congress. But again, I've gone off topic. Just in saying this, the secondary tribal, and a lot of it, which is one of the restrictions on the Catholic Church in a lot of areas, is in charge of all the secondary tribals out there. In a very layman's term, because I've only had to deal with Catholics, I know certain things have been bad and good, and my name's Colin, so everybody assumes I'm IRA, and I concur. Just saying, all secondary tribals are underneath the current secondary tribal. That is just how it goes. They share power equally amongst themselves and have a separate situation if there is something from Christianity and the Christians of the church serve them. That is the thing about it. They are generally an emperor in all situations. Portugal had an emperor. They lost their emperor. They're no longer part of, I think, the secondary tribal and can only be a construct. In saying this, they are also in charge of any and all tribals out there, unless one is considered to be a holy, something that has basically, to the Catholic Church, super metaphysic powers that are undealable with through orthodoxy. There is the supreme tribal and something of the heavenly order. Staying only with the secondary tribal, this is without any hesitation from me. They can go and take the place of any person, tribal, of the area, in anywhere that they can go to, and replace them and lead them without any reason, totally, 100%, completely. The reason why there's not that many Japanese Catholic churches, which I think in the United States, there would be probably, if you legalized it tomorrow, 500 in California alone. And you could probably say, based off of percentages, there would be 1,000 people for each one of the states, since we're all looking at percentages, population, and the Electoral College right now. It would be the fastest, overwhelmingly growing church out there. Church is good. It's done a lot of things for people. Kept families together, helped people that are from broken families, drug addiction, purpose, life, everything else. There's not one thing you cannot say that it hasn't helped with. You could also say there's not one thing that it hasn't hurt. And I will say, under the secondary tribal situation, this would give them a recon situation to go out and replace any native groups or any groups that are considered to be tribal, even if it would be considered tribalistic USA. And under that, since we're kind of a very weird, whatever you want to call it, referring to people in the House as president is a unisexual term that's generally used between people of situations. That's how it was used all the time out there. And it's like, well, I'm the president of this house and land. Like you would say, I'm the man of the house. And the wife could say she's the president of it. It's a very old type of language. I know certain people that do that. And depending on whatever you want to say, they say that threatens the power of that. It's mostly used only with people and everything else. And it's like this. They do yield to anyone who is a government or federal situation over it. And I do know whenever certain things do start up, they're generally the ones that, if it's not really like a real situation, it seems more like war, they're generally the ones that are targeted, regardless of color or anything else. Could you say that it's a secondary tribal? If it happens in the Bible Belt, it's probably more up there to the top of the list. If someone goes out and kills a Native American shaman, and then they start dictating and lording over and certain things are done and books are burned or whatever it is over stuff that would be tribalistic knowledge and everything else, would this be then, therefore, a movement by the secondary tribal? If there was something out there where there was an issue similar to the Third Estate that was in France, they went out and said these were all the things of old France. They needed to be removed. They needed to be gotten rid of. This is just a bourgeois way of thinking. This is a way of thinking from Louis VII. This is a way of thinking of Louis XIV. This is a way of thinking of Charles III or anything else. These are old situations and old nomenclatures. Just like the Musketeers have been gone and have been dealt with, and wherever they have fled to, the France will make an empire and go out and find it and destroy it, so it can never come back and have any of its failures again. Any tapestry, anything else, burned, gotten rid of, destroyed, as well as that which is books and parchments, just like when Napoleon sacked Rome. They were not in line with whatever it was of thinking. Most of the Third Estate was deposed and sought refuge in Rome. There was a ban on the Third Estate and everything else from immigration until Bill Clinton, as well as any actions of them politically, I think are still, I don't think they're allowed to organize in any type of political party. I do know several people with the Third Estate, and I do know several people that have connections to their family back in Rome that would love to have the Third Estate as secondary tribal. And there was a time when any Native American could seek asylum in France. Now they can only seek asylum, I think, in Rome. I think it happened a year before the movie Alpha. With all this being said, any tribalistic group can be taken, acquiesced, and used for sacrificial purposes by the secondary tribal for the purposes of a government, future actions of a government, enslavement of the government, or anything else to its will that is not them. Unto this situational action, this is one of the reasons why limitations are put on. How is there a way in this political statement that I'm sure someone will come after me over? And I do know that I'm pretty much right, and I have lived through a time period of them Nuremberging Knoxville, to where laws were just changed and made under extreme situations, and we even had, for a small time that they covered up because they couldn't keep them around, a military mayor that worked in conjunction with the mayor. And, it's all covered up. Took only maybe 6 months or something else for some things to go along with. And it's like they're supposed to work anyway very closely with whoever it is in Oak Ridge, since it's a surrounding county of it. They have people come in from the military all the time, talk to them, ask them about how everything's going, and keep them abreast of anything that's needed to be told to the mayor or something else. In saying all this, people will say I'm probably Japan bashing, but I could be told I'm equally French bashing, or else, depending on your political stance, since they left and went to Rome, Italy, and sought asylum in the probably somewhere around the Seer states. Am I Roman or Japanese bashing, or just Catholic bashing? There's major issues why certain people are not allowed to do things because of the laws made by the Senate. And I'm going to go, with the representatives and other working bodies. that are supported by the Constitution. But since they are not written in the Constitution precisely in the main preamble and our articles and everything else down through there, all that matters is the sentence of it, and it is dispensable by the president. But I would like to say strictly on looking at the secondary tribal, how could one say that they could exist, if they could, and if they were in existence doing said things? Is it really wrong to go out there and say they're supposed to be replaced underneath basically a kind of Cold War crusade by a group of people, irregardless of color or anything else, just title and the fact of their style of government, that they are supposed to take over, basically take off the cream of the crop of that tribal? Even if it's a group that, say, lives in Oakland. I haven't heard of Oakland, California in a long time. And they live in this block. They can be whatever color it is, and they meet the criteria for a tribalistic situation. Whatever it is. That they then are able to go in and assume control over this, and if they need to, they can kill a person and assume their identity or anything else. Is that legally acceptable underneath the First Amendment that says freedom of religion? Freedom of religion means there are some religions that do dominate other religions. No, domination is not numbers or anything else. It is domination. It is the rights and natural order of religion, and religion is the working process of this race, a tribe. So it has to be allowed to do that because you let us live amongst you freely. And we are here, are we not living here? There is the legal conundrum. There is a way of sacrifice there, because no sacrifice is ever greater than Jesus. It is just what they're doing, and everything is a sacrifice in order to send the spiritual whatever it is to whatever. Absorb it for the self or to whatever. And as it is, since they have judicialization over that, or judicial thought at that moment, are they not doing the divine will since they are secondary tribal? And see, everyone's like, you can't restrict us. But yet the Spanish Catholic Church is restricted in many ways. The Roman Catholic Church, the Byzantine Church, probably the most unrestricted Catholic Church is the German Catholic Church here. All for 2 or 3 different kingship denominations. And then someone will come along and say it's the IRA. And it's like the Irish Catholic Church isn't the IRA church. It's the Irish Catholic Church. I know this one's trailed on quite a long time, but this is a very important issue with probably locally something around the vast majority of population of the diocese. And those that just don't attend a church or else have private churches that really skirt the area around it. And also in dealing with many of the different native populations. And while I will say the Japanese, because they are directly involved and are the current secondary tribal, and most people hadn't realized that the Spanish for 2 years have been made the construct over the Nazi. and that the Nazi had been the construct of the papacy in Vatican City and its government, and the Mother Church for the last roughly 35 years, since 1985, until about 2.5, 3 years ago. Just solid 2, though. Anyway, like and subscribe, and please leave comments below. No matter what, express yourself.